everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Fantastic presentations already, but this is the one everyone secretly wants, numbers. But you know as well, it's nice to be here for the first time in forever. The last time I was in Dublin, I was running the marathon, and this should be a lot less traumatic than that. But what I'm here to talk to you about is a big data study that we've conducted at Radiocentre UK, which is shining a light on one of the heroes of our research portfolio. And I can hear them muttering through the audience, what is that? It's radio gauge. Radio gauge, and most of you will never have heard of this, is an award-winning radio ad effectiveness system that we use in the UK, and it's something that we set up back in 2008 and is funded entirely by the commercial advertising industry, and it's something that's used to extremely effective effect. So basically what we do is we send out regular questionnaires focusing on individual advertisers, and we then compare the results for commercial radio listeners against non-listeners to get the radio effect, in essence. So we look at metrics which include things like advertising awareness, brand awareness, such things as likelihood to purchase or user service. And then we also look at a whole wide range of creative metrics. So this gives advertisers the ability not just to see how their campaign is performing on radio, but also what can they possibly be doing to improve upon it in the future. So since 2008, we have measured over 1,000 campaigns using this system, and this is just a selection of some of the advertisers that we've worked with. And on an individual advertiser basis, this has been used to great effect, and it really, has been a fantastic tool for our industry. But the questionnaires are also extremely consistent, which has allowed us to build up something else in the background, this massive, some would say horrendous beast of a database. Okay, I would say horrendous beast of a database, which has got background data on each of those individual campaigns measured. We also include campaign planning factors, then the creative attributes within each of the campaigns, and then the results of the survey, which is the effectiveness outcomes. And that's actually given us what we believe is the biggest effectiveness database of its kind in the whole world, and that's something we're incredibly proud of. So it seemed like a natural time, with 1,000 studies done, that we should actually see what we can find out from this data. So we set about it with two objectives in mind. First of all, we wanted to get a bit of an overview of the headline effectiveness outcomes that advertisers have achieved by using radio over the last 14 years, but then also to understand better which creative and media campaign planning factors are particularly influential when it comes to optimizing results. How am I doing for time? Right, talk faster, Tara. Okay, so in terms of methodology, we worked with a company called Colortext, who had the benefits of having set up the radio gauge system back in the day, so they knew this data inside out. Stage one was what I call the character building and horrendous part of data cleaning and alignment, and that takes about 3 months of to and fro, making sure all gaps were plugged in the data. It was a time of my life I will never get back. Then we pulled this all together to get a data summary, and then to take a further look and to identify influential variables. And this is the mass of numbers that we got out of this. We measured 1,000 campaigns, within which were 463 brands and 14 sectors. Across that were 7 radio planning factors, 22 creative attributes, and 5 effectiveness outcomes. That gave us 800,598 total data points to analyse. I didn't analyse that because I'd be lying in a darkened room now and not able to have conversation. But to put the findings into a bit of context, there are 2 main roles of marketing. They're considered to be long-term brand building and then short-term activation or sales, or whatever. But to put that into context a bit more, ultimately, long-term is about creating a future demand. But then long-term is about converting an existing, already there demand and moving that along fast. So looking at the long-term first of all, and the radio gauge metrics that we had within the system, we measured awareness, brand relevance, and brand trust across those 1,000 campaigns. So, first of all, what I'm showing you here is the average uplift rates of commercial radio listeners versus non-listeners. So we asked people, have you seen or heard advertising for XYZ brand across all of these surveys? And what we saw was that there was an uplift amongst the commercial radio listeners of 49%, which is incredible. But it's fair to say that radio is a reach medium. And it's also probably fair to say that ad awareness is the easiest metric to actually see a shift with for this type of study. So looking at more difficult to shift metrics, first of all, brand relevance, and asking people to agree this brand is for people like me, and here the uplift is 24%. So we already know from other research studies that radio listeners often see themselves as a part of a community, and whether that's geographically or just by virtue of what they're consuming, and that's really reflected there. But also, one of the buzzwords that seems to be coming out all the time at the moment is trust. And this is a really strong story here. 31.6% uplifts in commercial radio listeners agreeing that they trust the brand that they've heard advertised on the radio. So looking now at the shorter term metrics, so brand consideration and response. 3 minutes, I can do this. Okay. I feel like I'm going to be catapulted through the ceiling if I don't hit it. So we asked people, if you were considering buying products, category, whatever, today, how likely would you be to consider, again, XYZ brand name? And the average uplift here is 18% amongst commercial radio listeners. So this, the starter, is being able to see that radio is driving people to actually take some form of action. But it's also driving them online. And that can often be a good push in the right direction for actually doing something. So for these questions, we didn't compare it against non-commercial radio listeners because we were only asking against people who recalled each campaign. What we know here is when we asked which of the following actions did you take as a result of hearing each ad, we saw that 21% on average had searched online for details, and 19% had accessed the brand's website. So again, we are seeing that this is pushing action, which is a great news for our medium. So I've talked about averages, but as you would expect, once you're kind of breaking it down to individual sectors, and indeed if you start looking at the individual advertisers, you do start seeing quite big shifts amongst the data, but you are still seeing some form of positive shift. So what we're seeing from this, however many years back since 14 years, there you go, that's why I'm good at maths. What we're seeing here is that overall, radio is giving an uplift effect. Okay, and just very, very quickly, in 1 minute, 15 seconds, what affects radio campaign performance in terms of fixed factors and variable factors? By fixed factors, we're talking about things that can't be changed: sector, size of brand, type of purchase. Variable factors are things like the creative execution and campaign weights. Okay, and looking here at ad awareness uplift rates, what we see is that the best performing creative campaigns were placing an emphasis on creative consistency. So whether that's using similar voice, the same voice actor or a consistent sonic, 8 out of 10 of the top 10 creative attributes that were coming through here for the best performing campaigns were showing that consistency was key. Okay, and then finally, looking at the effect of media planning factors, as I have 14 seconds before the spring sends me through the ceiling, what we see is that reach was really important. So for campaigns that focused on building reach were really performing well across the database. No, okay, I haven't gone through the ceiling, so we're good. So really, the headlines are, we know that radio delivers significant uplifts in effectiveness outcomes, and that's throughout the purchase funnel in terms of creating and converting demand. It works effectively as a lead medium within a wider media mix, across sectors, and generally it's a highly, highly efficient medium to be using. In terms of the guidance we'd give for advertisers to optimize audio ad effectiveness, just really try and drive that consistency with your creatives and really focus on building reach. There's a lot of talk about OTH, but actually reach is king. And 51 seconds over, I do apologize, but I'm all done.